I haven't had to do this in front of these people in a long time.
You should get down and get some some push-ups in.
I know. No, I'm
ripped.
good. Yeah, I think let's just jump into it. Screw it. It started. If you're listening to this, you've already heard the beginning or not, but either way is fine. We're recording a podcast again for the first time in a long time. I didn't look up how long it's been since I last recorded an episode, but it's been a few years. And it's something that I have wanted to come back to. It's probably the thing that I've missed the most from sort of taking a break from everything that I was doing. And it's something that I had a lot of sort of like fear and anxiety about, I guess, just sort of figuring out like what it would be living up to what it used to be, sort of how to account for all the ways that I've changed since doing that and the shift in my own perspective. And, so Chris Fenner and I were talking, and he sort of has continually kicked me in the butt to just start doing it again. And I said, sure, if you'll do it with me at least. So now we're figuring out a whole new system
multiple
for recording.
times.
Yeah, and then Chris was like, let's do it tomorrow. And I was like, no, I have to think about it some more. And then Chris was like, okay, let's do it the next day. And I was like,
no, I want to think more.
Yeah, just dragging it out. So now we're recording this, and we have a bit of a plan. It's definitely a work in progress, but, the intent is that we've sort of kept the old name, and that for now, the first season is going to be short, topical conversations with the two of us, and then moving forward, we'd like to bring back in other people and guests and stuff, but just starting at the beginning. And so hopefully if you're listening to this, it'll be helpful. And I wanted to say thank you to everyone who sent me really positive messages on Instagram about this and was very supportive. So I feel like now that I've sort of shaken my nerves off.
Were you surprised about the positive messages?
I don't know. I was a little bit. I think I had this feeling that was like, I don't want to say a saturated market, but like there's not room to do that again. It's almost like, and I think that was even the sense that I got after I left YouTube, was like, I feel like and some of this was already going on, but it was like, as I pulled out was right when like Peter McKinnon and Indie Mogul and all these other channels sort of took off. And that's where every time that I looked at doing it again, I was like, what do I have to do that isn't already being done? Like when I started, I feel like there was this big gap between like really, really high end inaccessible stuff and like really YouTubery DIY PVC rig stuff. And it was like, okay, there's a gap that we can fit in the middle here. And then as I got out, well, yeah. And so, yeah, I was surprised at just how much people seemed to be excited for it to come back. I was always excited at how well this did to begin with, honestly. Right. Like, I was talking to someone a week ago about that. It's like, I was in London at the British cinematographers event, London NAB, and like was talking to some guys from the Facebook group, and this girl in front of us turns around and was like, oh, I recognize your voice from your podcast, and she was from Latvia. I like got recognized in Chicago in a hotel by people. I was like at the
you're
lunch
like a big
line.
Deal? 3 years ago?
Yeah, I was internet famous within the film community if I was in a localized place where you had a lot of those people and they were connected to this. But yeah, it was always crazy to me how big it got, and sort of like it started off as almost like a joke, it was like me and Dennis and you and Mike Lee Thomas and like just a few people who like
really
I was friends with.
Yeah, it was just
it was me, but I mean, like, guest wise, and then it was like episode 6 or something was like Greg Fraser, and then it was
that was kind of like the big. That's just kind of like it broke the dam, so to speak, right? That episode.
I think so. Yeah, that was sort of like, and that's where I was honestly even surprised at how positive he was about it. That he was really into it, and he sort of became a champion for it in some ways. Where like he was the one who got the Bradford Young interview. Like that never would have happened if Greg Fraser didn't grease those wheels. And then, I was like at NAB a year later, and he was trying to hook me up with Gareth Edwards and was like texting me directions to run around and be like, you need to go meet Gareth Edwards. And it didn't work out, but it was just like, I think it was surprising because I like got a phone call from Greg Fraser one day. I was out to lunch and he was asking me about like digital Sputnik skin tones. And I was like, aren't you busy winning Oscars? Like,
That's crazy.
it was really weird. And so I think there's some sense that like, it's hard because you don't want to fill your own head, but there was always this sense I had that like there's something valuable here. And I think my sense is that the most valuable thing that I have in these conversations is a like at least a willingness to attempt to be brutally honest and to not oversimplify and polarize things and be clickbaity and to just follow the message. And so, you know, we talked about coming back. It's like, I think just to lean into that more and more. Like there's plenty of gear reviews, there's plenty of 3-point lighting things, but just talking about the ugly parts of the industry and the ugly parts of a career here and like the hard things and the lessons that no one wants to teach you on YouTube. You know, that's a space that I guess I'm comfortable sitting in, and it's conversations that you and I have had a lot. And so, you know, I think it sort of makes sense for us to slog into them together.
Yeah.
So
great.
Who are you?
I'm let's see. First off, I'm Julia's husband. If you don't know my awesome wife.
What
I live in
suck
Atlanta.
up.
No, I think it's important to know
It is.
that your significant other has meant so much to you and has been the main point of your success. Like without her, any quote unquote success that I've had, it's not mine, it's we. So not trying to suck up, just being honest. I don't think it actually matters to this conversation. I think going back to what Evan was saying, I looked up Super Secret. Last one you uploaded, I think was 3 years ago. Does that sound right?
Sounds right.
Okay, cool. So since then, you have changed immensely. Both like, I think in your thinking, what's important to you in life, also like physically, which has been awesome. You got getting the CrossFit and just making self-help really important to you. I know I have changed, and I hope that people listening, if you go back 3 years, you might be a little aghast at who you were and hopefully excited about where you're going and appreciative of where you are currently. So because of that time and the change that's happened, I think you and I, probably about a month ago, we just started having like awesome conversations about shit that was like not necessarily filmmaking, but like life.
Yeah.
And maybe how small really what we do and what we put ourselves worth in is really in the grand scheme of things. And just I know part of the reason of kind of pushing you or being excited about you starting over is just those conversations to me are the best conversations to have. I know when I'm on a job, I love the people I'm around, honestly, more than the work sometimes. And if there's, you know, cool cats a part of certain things, I'll jump on it. Whereas, you know, in the past, I might not do that job. And so people more and more have meant so much to me, and just hearing the change and just being stoked about you open to change and maybe some of your, I guess, faults in the past or like shortcomings you've worked on and improved, and just us. And then me also telling about the things that I've tried to look at differently and improve on. It's been really, I hate to use the word fruitful, but encouraging and just really cool conversations. And so that was kind of the spurring of like, dude, you need to, like, if we would just record these phone calls, they'd be amazing. At least for us. And this is also, I think, something that you've started back, just a little selfish because, and we just want to make it kind of about us and about our conversations because we enjoy it. And if other people seem to enjoy it, that's rad. But I'd be cool just doing, 3 of these and never doing them again if those 3 conversations were like really meaningful and full of things that people could really like lean on and learn from, or just appreciate and just kind of like also be along for the ride, or they can really relate to. So, but that's kind of why I've pushed you to start them again. I've personally enjoyed those phone calls. So, and for anybody out there listening, it's like once every 2 weeks. We're not like every day talking to each other.
Yeah, bro. It's like once in a while. Our wives are way more important than each other. But I mean, and I think that's fair. And I think part of the thing that I was getting at with you is like people might not know this about us, but like we've been in this together for a long time at this point, you know, and sort
Right.
of there have been seasons, and I feel like hard conversations have probably been a landmark of our relationship. But like Chris was sort of the first real like industry friend, I would say, that I had, where it was like I went to my first NAB and was looking for a room and got connected to some people. I have to tell, hey, you can tell the story if you want.
No,
but,
you tell it.
I'll tell the story. Fine. So I was just getting into making stuff. You know, at the time I was like 18 or 19 and had a DSLR and didn't know anything about the industry. Decided to go to NAB and just learn what I could. Was looking for a room. I had gone to Masters in Motion already at this point, I think, and so I'd sort of gotten connected to like the Twitter film community was where it was happening at the time. Like Twitter was the platform, and so I was fishing around for a roommate. And I want to say that like Christina or someone from Masters in Motion sort of like retweeted that, and somehow I got connected to you and your friends from what's it called, the big church down there.
North Point, I think they were working at the time.
Yeah, Travis and I forget the other dude's name.
Yeah.
But so we got connected and we're like, hey, you know, we have a room. You're welcome to stay with us. Very, very kind. You know, it's weird to think back to like some of the stuff that I did at that age. It was just like, I just decided to go to Vegas with strangers. But got to the hotel. It was my first time in Vegas and everyone was out. And so I just like crashed. Went to bed, and I don't know where you were, but I met Chris when we woke up next to each other in a queen bed in Vegas. And so that was
that's the story.
8 years ago, almost 9 years ago at this point. It's like forever ago.
Yeah.
But yeah, and so from there it was like you were already, you know, I think definitely ahead of where I was in the industry. You were working as a DP. I think you had just done that Lecrae video that I know that I was like super floored by, because I was, you know, it's good, but especially where I was. Yeah. The Confessions of a Millionaire.
Yeah, or something. Yeah.
But so Chris and I met, and we sort of like, I feel like Siamese twinned. We like latched onto each other and just started pulling each other into things. And you know, I brought Chris up to help me with some early projects. And if you've heard my stories, you've probably heard some of the stories of Fish Market commercials and Mass Maritime Academy videos, and then Chris had an opportunity for this watch video, and you know, we did ESPN stuff together, and we've sort of gone through the ringer and spent seasons where we were closer and seasons where we were doing our own thing. And Chris is an incredibly accomplished filmmaker in his own right and has worked on some very cool stuff, especially in the last few years, and you know, union projects. And so you have a whole different perspective, I think, now than I do, and sort of where we've ended up. But yeah, just sort of like one of the people I think who I value for your willingness to just keep sort of slugging it out, both in the industry and in life and in our relationship with each other. And I think that's sort of like the thing that I value most in people at this point, is like the willingness to just go out there, look at hard things and confront them. And whether that's anything from like how we're looking at lighting, you know, interviews, to how we're communicating with people, to how we're negotiating with production, to, you know, any of the other stuff that we're going to get into. I think that willingness to just like accept that you don't know everything, but that you're willing to do hard things to make things better, is why I really value you as a friend, and why I feel like I'm excited to have your perspective in these conversations.
I love it. Let's do it. No, I appreciate that. No, yeah, I think that's a good summary. And yeah, I'm just excited about, like, I mean, I know things will touch in the filmmaking world, but I think kind of like the conversations more about life and the ancillary things that have such an impact on what we do as a profession. Mm-hmm. And those are going to be really fun, I think. And yeah, I think also, like, as far as bringing in guests and having people on, you know, if you bring in Greg Fraser again, I think your line of questions that you asked him however many years ago, let's say 4, is going to be back then is going to be totally different now. Like, frankly, right. I'm going to want to know a lot about like his work life balance, or if that's even a thing in his consideration of how he operates. Friends, like, it's probably his film crew. Is mainly his friends.
Right.
What does he do outside of work? What's his hobbies? Things like that are sometimes it gets people more excited to talk about that. And I just want to really get to know people and ask those questions that you normally aren't asked. And then challenge things. Like, I think we're both now more confident in who we are, and we're not afraid to ask tough questions to anybody, because like that's what life is. And it's those tough questions sometimes spur from a point of, I want to learn, a little bit of selfishness, because if I ask this question, I'm going to get an answer that's going to help me down the road. So yeah, I'm excited about it. Excited about what can happen. So let's get into it.
Well, it's interesting you say that, because I feel like I always sort of felt like the podcast for me was this, looking back on it, was the conversations were almost like this exploration of my subconscious that was like slightly ahead of where I actually was. Because when I look back at like the interview we did with Bradford Young, we pretty much just talked about like work-life balance. Like, we didn't talk about technical stuff. And like there were other conversations I had with people around then, and I think I was really hammering on that. And I at the time I didn't know why. And then it was like 2 months later that I was like, I need to shut down this whole big part of what I do and rebalance my life.
Right.
And so I think that's part of what made me scared to come back to it, honestly, was like this sense that it's a vulnerable representation of whatever I'm dealing with at the moment.
Well, you're a verbal processor, so once you get going, you got to pull that e-brake to stop, and you just will keep going.
Right. And I think there's something valuable to that, but it's like, and there was something to this, like spending, months verbally processing these things with people, and them hearing it but not being a part of the other conversations, and then making a decision that things had to change, and just getting almost exclusively negative feedback for that,
From
which
people
that's
that
another
didn't know the whole story though, right?
Right. Yeah, I guess that's what I'm saying, is like, and so even in these conversations, I think the scary part is that these conversations for a lot of people are going to be the only conversations of ours they hear. And there's always something weird about people having whatever that perception is of you. And I think I've just come to accept it on some level, but it's like, you were there literally the moment that I archived the Super Secret Film Group.
Do you want to preface this any, just kind of like, because we've gone to like, we talked about you and I and our relationship, yada, yada, yada. And now, is there anything you want to say about kind of why you started down the path of even considering shutting down what probably 90% of the people from the outside looking in would consider something very successful? I'm putting these in air quotes for anyone that's not watching.
Yeah. No, I think that conversation to me is like part of a topic maybe. And so like, I think that's worth digging into, like almost our shifting definitions of success and like what we thought we wanted. Yeah. And so I definitely want to get into that. I would spend way too much time on that to get into it right now. So, I think the passing thing is just that, like, you've seen those decisions and you've seen what's going on in the rest of my life. And like the people who were there, we were all out at a bar. It was like 5 filmmaker friends. And I had been sort of like really struggling with this decision for a while and feeling like this is damaging things in my life. I need to do something about it. And I was joking, I think at one point, and I like pulled up the archive group button and you're like, you should just do it. And I did it. And, at the time it was actually a helpful thing. And it was in the context of people who understood it. And then like the next day I started getting death threats from people.
Wait, seriously? Like straight up death threats?
Not straight up death threats. Okay. I think the most, I got a number of very strongly worded messages. One of my favorites was something to the tune of, I'm going to make sure you never work in this industry again. Like, I'm going to go tell everyone that you're an asshole and shouldn't be employed by them. I had another guy.
That was so good.
It doesn't make any sense to me. Yeah. And that's where like I had to sort of accept that. I had so many crazy things that didn't make sense to me that followed that, where like, cause I took a break from Instagram. I found a bot and I unfollowed everyone on Instagram. It just unfollowed everyone. And I had this kid, you know, I don't know who he was. It was just in the slew of people who I sort of got connected to on Instagram, sent me this really long DM about how he was like, look, man, I used to look up to you and you were really cool and I can't believe that you unfollowed me and that's really fucked up and you this and you that. And I was just like, I mean, not to be rude, but it's like, dude, I don't even know who you are. Like, this is not personal. Like, I am doing what I have to do to not destroy my life right now. And I understand that, like, you looked up to me and that's fine. And I'm sorry if you don't understand what's going on. But, like, if you look at my follower count as 0, I didn't unfollow you because I think your work is shitty. Like, I unfollowed you for other reasons. And if you can't see that right now, that's fine. And I think that those reactions of all the people who saw little pieces of things and had really strong feelings about it are probably the biggest thing that has scared me from putting anything out again. And it's why every time that I've thought about getting back into YouTube, you know, getting back into a podcast, doing whatever else, is like, I know my intention and I know what I'm trying to do here, but I almost had like PTSD from people just like holding on to that. And so, you know, I don't say that to hedge our conversation so much as to say that, like, if you're listening to this and you ever hear anything that, you know, you don't understand, like, 1, I'm happy to talk about it more. Like, feel free to reach out to me. But 2, know that everyone who does stuff like this is real people outside of what you're watching or listening to and has so much going on that you're not aware of. And so, like, I mean, again, we don't have to get into the whole story of sort of what happened, but like I was literally just like everything around me was crumbling. And like the ripcord that I pulled to sort of like stop the ship sinking was, I'm just going to free up a bunch of bandwidth by shutting all this stuff down. And that was sort of what I needed to do to level out. And it's been probably one of the best decisions I ever made. And I don't regret anything that I did. And I'm excited to be doing it again. Knowing what I know now, you know, having skills, having support, having processed all that stuff. And hopefully people get something out of it. And, you know, for anyone who's still mad at me, you know, maybe when you hear the rest of the story, that'll change. And if not, I hope you find better things to be mad at.
Yeah, dang. I didn't know all of that, but that's crazy, dude.
Dude, people get really fired up. It's like, it's the amount of emotional energy that, which is like, and that's another thing that was just so frustrating about it was, you know, it was like the months leading up to that, I was having all these conversations with people. I was trying to figure out, like, can I make this like financially viable so I can get help so that it stops destroying me? And so I'd like tried to launch like this other Patreon thing and stuff. And like, I kept running into this sentiment that was like, we really like what you're doing, but it's not worth anything. Like, we did a meetup in New York City that you were there for. And I remember a dude came up to me as a member of the group and was like, I'm really glad you're doing this. And I'm really glad it's $20 because if it was any more, I don't think I would have come. And I was like, what the fuck am I supposed to do with that information? Like, seriously.
Nice to meet you too.
Yeah, like, I'm glad that I put all the effort into this, and I'm glad that it was worth $20. But like, and so this experience of like spending months and months going like, I think this is good, I think this is valuable, I think what I'm doing is helpful, I think this is valuable to the community, and people being like, yeah, it's fun, but it's not worth anything. We're not going to give you anything for it. It's not. We don't care.
Did you take that sentiment harder because at the time you were probably putting a lot of your self-worth into it?
I think so. I mean, I think there was some sense of like, it's hard to be told that something that you believe in isn't worth anything, you know, and to not take that personally. But I think that's where at a certain point, like I came to the point that I was like, everyone keeps telling me this isn't worth anything anyway, and it's destroying my life. So like, I'm just going to shut it down. Yeah. And then the minute you shut it down, everyone comes back on you and is like, what the hell? How are we going to book crew? You ruined my life. I don't ever want you to work again. And it's like, which one is it? Is it not worth anything, or is it like the most valuable thing in your career right now? And I think that was one of my big takeaways was like, you can't put much stock in just what anyone says, honestly. And that's the, like, at the end of the day, people were glad to take from it as long as they were getting something out of it, and they didn't want to give back into it, and they didn't really care what that meant for me. And when, you know, I sort of put my foot down, there were some people who were supportive, but for the most part, you know, everyone was just thinking about themselves. And it was like, I think,
you know, if people had been in that bar when all of us were just maybe probably weren't even talking about work. Maybe at the time we were, and seeing what you were going through, seeing your eyes. I hope anybody that would have been there would have encouraged you to shut it down. I think it's totally different when, keyboard warriors or whatever are going to bitch and moan. But when you look into somebody's eyes and you see like that they're not right and that they need to work on themselves and they've been giving up themselves for so long for others, like there's no argument that you made the right call. I mean, look at yourself now. Just let's talk about from a physical perspective. Like
Chris is really obsessed with my body.
Well, I mean, I've had Julia has literally said, "Damn, Evan is like super fit now." I'm like, "Yeah, he's doubled down in the CrossFit world. He's spent time on himself." And I think that I don't want to blame it on like internet culture, but having so much free stuff available to us at a click of a button has made us very like close-handed with things. Like we're always taking and bringing it into ourselves versus opening up our hands and giving. And yeah, sometimes like, okay, cool. I mean, I think everyone survived you shutting it down.
Yeah.
Like everybody's cool.
The video village quickly filled in the gap.
Right.
And that was fine. Like that was the thing that I had some sort of brief angst about and then quickly had to let go. But yeah, and to give you some credit, I was thinking about this today, actually. I think I owe my initial interest in CrossFit to you because you were on the CrossFit train years before I was, and I probably made fun of you. And then like years later, okay. I sort of jumped on the bandwagon.
Well, you have when you get on to things, you just take them to the extreme. Let's just put it that way. Anytime you get into something, you have a very addictive personality. So exactly, like Michael Scott said, or did he say, don't half shit, full shit? Maybe I'm.
Oh, don't half ass.
Yes,
two things, full ass, one thing.
Exactly, you full ass whatever is in front of you. And for me, I just use it as a way to hang out with Julia, and then just to keep a little bit of fitness for like handheld work and stuff. I do a lot, but you are like,
you're a very fit dude,
I'm going to CrossFit Games. Maybe not as a competitor, but I gotta, when I film it, at least look like I belong there.
Yeah. So you're a very fit dude though. I feel like I do. I mean, it's funny because this is another self-perception thing. I mean, I tend to still, most days I still feel like a fat fuck. Like it's a hard mental thing to get over
in your head. Exactly.
But there's something funny to like, I feel like it's such a stark comparison, and it's such an easy comparison. I don't have it with me right now, but I still have my driver's license from when we first moved to Connecticut, which was right around the time that everything shut down. And I was at Trader Joe's a week or two ago, and I bought some beer and got ID'd. And the lady literally looked at the ID, looked at me, and she said something to the tune of like, "That's really impressive. Congratulations for all the hard work you've put in."
Awesome.
And it was cool. But it's, and there's a separate conversation that, I think is a whole topic we could get into here, but it's like, it's always hard to update your perception of yourself from the way you used to be, and I think a lot of days I still feel like my fat, out of shape self, or I feel like the 19-year-old DSLR kid at NAB who didn't know what a DP was, or whatever those perceptions are hard to outrun, and it's normal to get that like imposter syndrome that gets associated with that. But the moments that it clicks, it does feel good, and it's crazy to try and give yourself some perspective and go like, look at how far we've come. I mean, I was thinking about this too. There might be more dollar value gear at play in this podcast than on the first thing we worked together on. I've got an O'Connor tripod.
Oh yeah. Okay. And you're on FX9 right now?
Yeah, but like that's just, it's silly, but it's true. It's like, it's something that I am
really funny.
Grateful for, It's funny that like we do this thing that's like, we should record our phone calls, and we have the ability to like do it in the way we are right now, which, we're not some broadcast TV station, but I think it's easy to always just sort of feel like you're not living up to stuff. And it's like, this is cool. So I'm excited to see where it goes. Glad to be doing it together. And to anyone who got this far, good for you. The next one will be more coherent.
Yeah, if we do another one.